And with a little bit of rusties, you can look just like me. Ka-chow.
All right, guys. Chris Mathis, Spencer Mathis back here for another edition of the Chris Mathis podcast. We took last week off. Had a crazy transition with work, trying to move into our new building here at Feather Sound in Clearwater, iHeartRadio, Tampa Bay. It's awesome. Love it. Just took a little bit of time to get situated and did not want to get into a podcast without 110% effort. So here we are. It's been a little bit over a week and some change since our last podcast as we previewed the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I had the Eagles winning that game. Spence, I forgot what you had picked, but obviously the Chiefs came out on top. What was your prediction in that game?
I picked the Chiefs by the correct score.
No, you did not. Yeah. All right. I thought about it for a second. That was good. But again, just a crazy Super Bowl that we witnessed just a few weeks back. And it was one of those that'll forever go down in history. There were a lot of people that either loved it and then the rest of them absolutely hated it. And I don't know why. I thought it was a pretty good matchup and a tale of two halves, if you will. I thought that two keys in that game were the fact that the Eagles got off to a hot start, and the second half, the fact that the Eagles could not make adjustments to slow down the Chiefs in that second half. So that was kind of the tale of two halves. Jalen Hurts unable to prevail. Patrick Mahomes wins yet again. The guy did what he did best, and that's win football games. And he's a superstar. We are able to witness some greatness in front of our eyes. He is no Tom Brady yet. They compare him to Tom Brady. They say GOAT, baby GOAT. Some had that argument. NFL, EA Sports, Madden had that argument. I disagree. We're not there yet. But, maybe 15 years, if Patrick Mahomes can stay healthy, we might have a little bit of a different story regarding Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it was a good game. Came down to the refs, which is why everybody hates it, which is basically every single Super Bowl ever played because that's what they do. So I think the game was good. Probably the best of what we could have asked for besides the Eagles coming out on top with the victory. The Chiefs now, Mahomes with the second Super Bowl win, so he's climbing up the ladder right now. Not exactly sure if they're going to stay at the top because I'm not sure how long Andy Reid's going to coach that team because he is their bread and butter. But a good game for the Chiefs, 2 Super Bowl wins in 5 years as Patrick Mahomes as the starter. Very impressive. And the only guy that really rivals that is Tom Brady and the Patriots. And Mahomes' numbers look pretty incredible, which Brady, of course, was playing in a different era in his first 5 years. But seeing Mahomes put up those numbers and win 2 Super Bowls is pretty impressive, which is probably the most impressive start we've ever seen to an NFL career.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Patrick Mahomes will forever go down in the history books. He showed his dominance and his ability to throw the ball all over the field, even with a little bit of a banged-up ankle. Again, 38-35, the final score in that Super Bowl, going on, 2 weeks ago this Sunday, which is hard to believe. It's crazy how fast time is flying. Speaking of which, a year ago, Wednesday was my first day here in Tampa Bay at iHeartRadio Tampa Bay. So it's been an incredible run for me so far in the last year. Spencer's doing big things in his senior year there at Young Harris College, calling some basketball games, which is probably almost over. I think the Peach Belt Conference tournament upcoming. Also getting into some lacrosse, soccer, probably some softball too. So he's got a crazy schedule upcoming, and we had to knock out this podcast. But obviously want to talk about this NFL offseason, because I feel like there's a misconception regarding the NFL, the fact that once the Super Bowl is over, football season's done. That's not the case whatsoever. I feel like the most exciting time, unless your team is in the playoffs or unless your team is in the Super Bowl, is the offseason, because there are a lot of different moves and questions that come about. What will the team do at quarterback? What coaching decisions will they have to make in regards to cutting players, signing players, trading for players, the whole 9 yards. Obviously, the draft coming up in April, a lot of mock drafts coming out right now. And I don't put too much stock into those drafts simply because, when I was growing up, I looked at mock draft after mock draft, and I always tried to make my own. And after about 2014, I said, you know what? They're never accurate anyways, unless they're the top 3 or 4 picks. Why do you even care? So I think mock drafts in a way kind of impact draft stock in a negative way. Look at Anthony Richardson. They're talking about him left and right. He's going to go higher in the draft now. The same thing with Hendon Hooker, who, right after the college football season ended, they said he was going to be a 3rd or 4th round guy. And now he's getting talked about like he's going to be a 1st or maybe late 2nd round guy, which is, something incredible and something to keep your eye out on. But a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks this offseason, including the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But before we talk about NFL hopefuls and wannabe NFL quarterbacks that obviously are on the right track to do so, we have to talk about a guy by the name of Aaron Rodgers, a guy that Spencer at least a few months ago, absolutely loved. I kind of like Rodgers whenever he's on the Pat McAfee show. However, I think he's a me guy. I'm not big on me guys. I feel like he's a me guy. I don't know. I feel like he draws out everything, and I heard about him taking this darkness retreat for 3 or 4 days. I think it was earlier this week, Spence. He took it. He left a day early. He reported back on Wednesday, so he left the camp a day early. Aaron Rodgers and where he might end up, because he's spending the next couple of days or weeks or hours. I think he'll make this decision by, I'm going to say, early next week regarding what he's going to do, if he's going to return to the Green Bay Packers, if he will request a trade, or if he will hang up the cleats, which I do think is realistic for a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that his heart is like Tom Brady's, and it wasn't 110% in the game like Tom Brady's was.
Yeah, the thing with the NFL offseason, it being the best time of the year for most teams or most fans of teams, is because, I mean, like you said, there's only really 4 or 5 teams that have a legitimate shot each and every year to win a Super Bowl. Last year in the offseason, we thought that the Chargers and the Broncos would be powerhouses in the AFC West. We thought the Raiders would be up there with them. Instead, it was really just the Chiefs running away with that entire division, winning the Super Bowl. And then going back to what you said about Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker, the Hendon Hooker story reminds me a lot of Malik Willis last year, in which the Titans drafted him in the 3rd round. Anthony Richardson, though, on the other hand, is a dude with a ton of talent, just had a horrible, horrible team around him at Florida. And obviously he made a ton of mistakes, but I think he is probably the best quarterback prospect coming into this year's draft in terms of somebody that a team might take probably in the top 10, a team that may have a top 10 pick that really shouldn't really be in the top 10. They just had an off year, a team that can develop a guy like Anthony Richardson. He could turn out a lot like Josh Allen with the Bills, in which he becomes a top 10 quarterback in the league, because Josh Allen coming into the NFL was also not a very good quarterback, in which in college he was not great. His first season with the Buffalo Bills, he was a laughingstock. He lost him that first playoff game that he ever played. So I think Anthony Richardson's a lot like Josh Allen, especially in terms of physical ability, because Anthony Richardson can run all over the field. He's the biggest quarterback in the draft. He's probably going to be the fastest at the 40-yard dash. So Anthony Richardson going up there, I don't know if he's top 10, but I think he's at least top 20. And that is, like you said, really climbed up because of the mock drafts, which do affect the draft ratings each and every year. And I think that NFL teams do put a lot of stock into looking at these mock drafts, and then the GMs go over it, see exactly what the other teams are thinking about it. And that's how they kind of see who at least is going to go in the top 5, because the top 5 is usually completely predetermined by a week before the draft anyway. So going along with that, you've also got the Aaron Rodgers news, in which he'll probably make his decision at early Monday or Tuesday, because he does go on the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday, in which he said he will be back on next week. So I'm expecting a decision before that one. And I think that he's, of course, narrowed down to 16 teams, 15 teams, because you have to take out the Chiefs. 14 teams, you got to take out the Broncos. 13 teams, you got to take out the Chargers. A lot of great AFC teams with quarterbacks. And I think it's going to come down to probably 2 or 3 AFC teams, or he's going to stay in Green Bay, in which it doesn't really sound like he wants to stay there.
Yeah, and I don't think that the Green Bay Packers want him either. I feel like this relationship could have and should have ended years ago. The whole thing regarding no help at the receiver position, they drafted Jordan Love to sit behind him, maybe a little bit early to draft a quarterback high in the draft like they did a few years ago. I think Jordan Love's in year 3 or year 4 at this point. But also the fact that last year he complained to his rookie wide receivers after a bad, first couple of games of the season, in which he wasn't even at training camp or wasn't even putting in the work to help out those young rookie receivers. And then he calls them out on national TV. I think it was week 2 of the season, after his rookie receivers weren't able to catch and hang on to the football, and some young receivers too, which I found interesting. I don't think that was the right way to handle that either. But
yeah, but the thing with Aaron Rodgers is that people forget that he won back-to-back MVPs just going back to the year before this season. So he was the MVP coming into this season. Of course, he loses Devontae Adams, his top receiver, as a couple of rookies, in which Allen Lazard completely disappeared from the NFL playing field. So Rodgers, of course, didn't have a lot of good weapons this season. His tight end was out for most of the year. Mercedes Lewis was his number 1 target. His running game was good. The defense was horrible the first part of the season. He wasn't playing great, but I think regardless, whatever team that Aaron Rodgers plays on next year will be a playoff team at least, because he is still a top 5 quarterback in the league in terms of talent. He's just got to do what Brady did in 2020 whenever he went to Tampa Bay, because you go back and look at Brady in 2019 and he absolutely sucked. He was terrible in 2019. Everyone was saying, hey, he should retire, in which instead he went to a team that was loaded with weapons, a good defense. And of course, he's a great leader, which is why they won the Super Bowl. But to be surrounded with those weapons as one of the greatest quarterback talents of all time, like Aaron Rodgers is, I think that will be enough for him to probably get Super Bowl #2 if he can go to a team that has weapons like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which there is a couple of teams like that in the AFC, with the Las Vegas Raiders really being the #1 target there. Because if he goes to the Raiders and he has Darren Waller, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow to throw to in the slot, Josh Jacobs as the running back, of course, they've got to build their offensive line and defense. So did the Buccaneers in 2020. And I think Rodgers right now is a little bit more talented of a quarterback at this point than Brady was whenever he joined the Buccaneers at 44 or 43 years old. So Rodgers, I think he's 39 or just now reaching up to 40 years old before the season starts. And if he can go to a good team, I think we're going to see a lot of similarities to whenever Brady joined the Buccaneers or Stafford joined the Rams heading into that season.
I'm going to have to disagree with you wholeheartedly simply because I don't think that Aaron Rodgers loves the game of football anymore. I think that he's just playing football. He's getting paid big-time bucks. Tom Brady, it was eat, breathe, sleep football. Aaron Rodgers has not been about that, in my opinion, in quite some time. Now, he's good on the field, but as far as how invested he is into his team, into his self, other than, ayahuasca, which is fine, and taking a 3 or 4 day retreat, which is fine. I don't know if ultimately that's going to lead him to his decision of, hey, I'm going to come back to Green Bay, or I'm going to request a trade, or I'm going to retire. I think that Aaron Rodgers, no matter what he does, I'm going to write this down right now. I don't think he'll ever win another Super Bowl in his career. Last time he won was 2011 or 2012, right? That's forever ago. If he's going to an AFC team, yet alone, he's going to have to somewhat face or run into Patrick Mahomes, a guy in Josh Allen, maybe a guy in Lamar Jackson, who I'm not too high on. But if he stays healthy, he might can win a playoff game.
Yeah, but the thing is, he can take out an AFC team. He can take out an AFC team. His issue has always been the San Francisco 49ers in the conference championship, in which they've always seemed to have his number for some reason. But other than that, whenever he's not playing the 49ers in the playoffs, a lot of his playoff losses, or at least 2 big ones, have come in overtime. If you go back to the Cardinals one, in which he threw the Hail Mary to Jeff Janis to tie the game with no time left, and then they basically lost in the first play of overtime because their defense couldn't stop a 38-year-old Larry Fitzgerald from running down the field. I mean, a lot of Rodgers' career has been him having a great regular season, him going to the playoffs, playing a pretty good game, but losing ultimately because of his defense. If you go back to that Buccaneers-Packers NFC Championship, Tom Brady, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Aaron Rodgers, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they lose to the Buccaneers because their running backs fumbled twice. Rodgers, of course, couldn't get it done on the final drive, but, I mean, you look over there at Brady, who is a great quarterback, of course, but his team always seems to just be able to go above and beyond at the right moments. Whenever you look at Rodgers, his team seems to fail him, at least defensively in the big games, because the Packers in 2020 could have easily beat Tampa Bay if their defense played like it had all season, or if their running backs would have held onto the football. So Rodgers, of course, probably one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time, top 3 in terms of talent. But with just the Super Bowl, of course, it's going to be difficult for him to be winning another Super Bowl at this age. But you saw Tom Brady do it with a good team. And I think right now Rodgers is better than Brady was whenever he joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we're going to see Rodgers go to a powerhouse AFC team. But if he stays with the Packers, which I don't think he will, I think it's either join another team or maybe he's done. I do see him at least making the AFC Championship next year.
Man, I don't know. Again, I just don't think that Rodgers has that mentality it takes to win another ring. He did it. As you said, it was the Card. No, who did they beat that year? The Steelers, right? In Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think that Rodgers will ever do it again. He is talented. As far as pure arm talent, he's one of the most talented to ever play the game of football. He's just got a lot of things going on off the field that kind of worries me. And it's not like a freak accident or a freak situation like it was with Tom Brady and his divorce this year. It's like every year in and year out, he kind of brings that attention upon himself. Now, he could easily not have this attention if he did not go on Pat McAfee's show and talk about what he was going to do, how he was going to lead to his decision. He could have done that, kept it to himself, updated everybody on what was going on. But instead, I feel like he seeks that attention. He wants people to wonder and to talk about like what we're doing right now. Where's Aaron Rodgers going to end up next season? Is he going to play again? Will he retire? What's the deal? Is he coming back to Green Bay?
Yeah, I think that's not true, though, because if you go back to the storylines with Rodgers before he ever got any media attention, it was he didn't want the COVID vaccine. Of course, they're going to try and not let him play in 2020, wins the MVP in 2021. And then before that, all the stories were just him and his family's life. It was never him around the football field. He never had issues with the football team. It was just reporters going above and beyond to try and rat out Aaron Rodgers for something that really should have been publicized in the first place, his family life. So Rodgers has really never brought the drama to the football field. And then again, he's also averaging like 5 interceptions a season with 30-something touchdowns in his career, which is the greatest touchdown interception ratio in all time. So it's not like he's a guy that's going to lose his team football games regardless of where he goes. He could put up 25 touchdowns. He would still only throw 4 interceptions in a season, and his team would win 12 games if he had a comparable receiving core and a decent defense. He's in the playoffs each and every year. They could have made it this year. They just ended up losing to the team that they had to beat in week 18 by 1 point. So Rodgers is a great quarterback. I don't really think that the drama ever surrounds the team that he's on. I just think that the teams that he's on doesn't play great in the playoffs. Of course, that 49ers game last year in which they lost a horrible game. I think they lost 12-7. Their special teams gave up two touchdowns in the game, but the 49ers kicker missed the 2 extra points in that game. So Rodgers, of course, only put up 7 points, but San Francisco's defense is incredible. And that's always been a thing that Rodgers can't get past San Francisco. But other than that, he's a great quarterback, and wherever he ends up next year, I think he will be in the playoffs and probably at least a top 4 team in whatever division he ends up in.
Yeah, and again, I'm not arguing that he won't make the playoffs. He will make the playoffs. I just don't think that he ever wins another ring. Now, the Raiders, a report came out Thursday late afternoon. The Raiders are not expected to pursue Aaron Rodgers. They are looking to go different directions and won't be getting Aaron Rodgers, according to Hondo Carpenter, who's a publisher for Fan Nation. Sports Illustrated's Las Vegas Raiders reporter says that the Raiders are not going to seek after Aaron Rodgers, which puts kind of a kink in my whole idea. I thought it was Aaron Rodgers going to the Raiders or he stays in Green Bay. Actually, I thought it was going to be Raiders or he retires. What's your take? If you're a betting man right now today, as of Friday, February 24th, where would you put your money on? Where would Aaron Rodgers go, or will he retire?
I think he's going to be traded somewhere into the AFC, and I don't think I'm going to rule out the Raiders just yet, because if you go back to 2020, whenever Brady signed with the Buccaneers, the Raiders were right under there at the table, ready to sign Tom Brady, and they really, of course, they were one of the top teams in the running for Tom Brady, but they really kept it low-key. So did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it ended up being the Buccaneers that Brady chose. So, of course, this time it's Aaron Rodgers having to get traded from the Packers, so he gets to approve whichever AFC team he wants, because the Packers already explicitly said that they do not want to trade Rodgers to an NFC team. So you look over at the AFC, and a team that I see for the American Football Conference is the New York Jets, of course. That's a big one right now. They've got a good defense, a good receiving core, a young team, a good running back in Breece Hall if he can have a bounce-back season. I still think the Raiders are in play. Another team, there's just really not that many teams in the AFC right now that you could see besides the Raiders, the Jets, and the Tennessee Titans are the top 3 teams that I see. Maybe even the Indianapolis Colts, because Jim Irsay, their GM, does like to go for new quarterbacks each and every year. But if I'm
Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan.
Yeah, if you're Aaron Rodgers, I think the top 2 teams, if you're going to rule out the Raiders right now, are the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans. Because I remember last year, whenever Rodgers was in speculation of leaving the Packers again after an MVP season for some reason, the Titans were tied to his name the entire offseason because of Mike Vrabel. Of course, apparently they have a good relationship, and Rodgers had just bought real estate down there in Tennessee, which was
He's got a house.
Yeah, it was a big thing last year. So I think it's either going to be the Titans or Jets, and then a dark horse team probably to look out for now that you say the Raiders are ruled out. It's probably the Indianapolis Colts.
All right, guys, before we continue with quarterback talk and much more right here on the Chris Mathis podcast, wherever you guys are streaming us, YouTube, Spotify, also Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio app. This would not be possible without my friends at Information on Demand. Whether you need criminal background checks, drug screenings, academic accreditations, or other screening services, they've got you covered. And whether you're in Florida, across the country, New York City, middle of nowhere out there in Montana, like my friend, my brother, not my actual brother, Spencer, but my brother, Zach Weaver, out of Montana, they can get you guys the information you need in just 8 hours or less. Again, Information on Demand. You can rest easy knowing a highly trained search team will get you that information. They're fast, they're accurate, and they're affordable pre-employment background screening services. Give them a call today, 855-914-4636, or visit them online at informationondemand.net. Information on Demand, 855-914-4636, and that's like the old American Idol. Yeah, call 543 if you guys are watching the screen on YouTube and or Spotify. Again, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify too. We appreciate all of you guys, and this would not be possible without that. But I've been very thankful and grateful to keep up with you guys, and that you guys have kept up with me, and of course Spencer too on the podcast. And we're going to talk more about the NFL. And initially, we were going to talk about the Buccaneers offensive coordinator, Dave Canales. But I think that you guys would like to hear an entire podcast directed just on that. So what I think we'll do is we'll talk about one more quarterback, and then we'll call it quits for this episode, and we'll kind of get things salivating a little bit for next week. And Dave Canales, when we find out more about his coaching staff, more comments, more moves that the Buccaneers might make this offseason, or I should say this weekend, regarding cuts and restructures of contacts. But Derek Carr, also a free agent quarterback. Well, technically, Aaron Rodgers not a free agent, but Derek Carr is a free agent. He can pick at will where he ends up. He allegedly had a good meeting with the New Orleans Saints, obviously on the move. He's been to a couple of different teams. Spence, how do you feel about Derek Carr? He's entering his 10th season in the NFL, which is hard to believe. Derek Carr, 31 years old, now in the quarterback market. And in most years, he's probably a 5 to 6 top quarterback in regards to maybe free agency. But this year, or in terms of money, what he should get being paid, maybe a top 7 guy. But this year, he might end up being a top 3 guy due to the fact that he is the most sought after free agent quarterback on the market right now in the National Football League.
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about Derek Carr. He's a good quarterback. I saw a lot of things about maybe the Saints going for him earlier on last week, but I thought that something would happen there. Apparently, I think that thing is out. I don't think that that's a possibility anymore, is at least what I saw a couple of days ago from Ian Rappaport. So not exactly sure where Derek Carr could go, but of course I look at the other NFC South teams and I see each and every one of those teams being in a possibility for Derek Carr, of course, besides the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because they do not want to spend all that cap space to go all in this season. But I mean, the Falcons are a team that you could watch out for if Lamar Jackson signs back with the Ravens, which I think even if Lamar doesn't sign back with the Ravens, they're going to franchise tag him, because why would they not? Even if he doesn't want to play, you don't want to lose him. So waste a year of his career if you want to. And then you've got, of course, the Carolina Panthers, who, if they don't do anything, they've got Sam Darnold back out there again, which Darnold looked pretty good in the end of the season, but I don't know if he's really the guy that you want to go with in terms of your franchise quarterback. But Carolina, of course, not set up to win either right now at this point. The Falcons are a team that has a ton of cap space that I could see going for Derek Carr. There's, of course, a couple of other teams, but the NFC really doesn't seem that appealing for Derek Carr. I just do think that he will go to an NFC team after staying with the Raiders for so long in the AFC. So maybe the Washington Commanders, if they want to get a new quarterback over there. You've got a couple of options in the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals, if maybe you see them moving on from Kyler Murray. But right now, I think Derek Carr is a quarterback that if it was any other season right now, you would already kind of know where he was going. But this year, you kind of saw the Saints, and then that blew to nothing. And then there's really no other like rumblings for where Derek Carr is going, which of course it is only February, but I think that decision is going to be made before the draft. If the Lions had more money, I could see the Lions maybe going for a guy like Derek Carr, but I think they're content with Jared Goff and Dan Campbell as their head coach, who had a very good season last season. So we'll see exactly where Derek Carr will go. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say he goes to the NFC for once in his career.
Well, obviously, when you talk about Derek Carr, he also had a meeting with the New York Jets last weekend, and allegedly that went well too, which adds to the decision-making here. You know, if you're the Jets, I would much rather sign a guy in Derek Carr than trade away assets for a guy in Aaron Rodgers, because that's a young team, as you talked about before. If this was an older team and they needed to win right now, of course they would do whatever it takes to go get Rodgers and win right now. But if they've got a younger team, if they don't want to trade away those assets or those potential draft picks, they would rather pay a guy. And Derek Carr could be that guy that they solidify on at the age of 31 and say, hey, you know what? We've got at least 5 years of playoff contention with the New England Patriots slipping. Of course, Miami, you're unsure about their quarterback situation, which is also up in the air. Could we see, Derek Carr go to the Dolphins? That's unlikely, but it's still a possibility. And then, of course, the rest of that division is not too shabby. But either way, this would be a good year for the Jets to maybe take a shot on a guy, a veteran quarterback in Derek Carr, who might, quite frankly, be their best quarterback in quite some time.
Yeah, Derek Carr to the Jets is very appealing, but then you bring him back up the Miami Dolphins. I think I could see Derek Carr, of course, being the guy set in stone for New York, because, of course, like you said, they're a young team. Carr, 31 years old, has about 4 or 5 more good years. He's not up there with like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, of course, but he could be like a Mark Sanchez for a team like the Jets right now, who they have a great defense right now. They have a really good offense if Breece Hall can stay healthy, in which that offense was electric. But you look over at the Miami Dolphins, like you just said, and that brings up another opportunity for Aaron Rodgers, of course, because Tua Tagovailoa, or however you want to say his last name, I don't know if he can say it right now at this point in his career, but he may have to retire just because of how many concussions he's had. The Dolphins may want to move on from him. Mike McDaniel, a young coach. Of course, Rodgers already has worked with a young coach and who they have right now in LaFleur with the Packers. So that could be an appealing spot for Aaron Rodgers if he wants to work with another young coach. But apparently they had a little bit of feud this season because of how the offense was ran and just how badly that team was put together this season. Whenever they were in trade talks for receivers at the halfway point of the year, Rodgers was wanting receivers. He had to stay with rookies for the rest of the season. The Dolphins have the greatest receiving core in the NFL right now, with Tyreek Hill being the best receiver, in my opinion, and Jalen Waddle just such a beast. Mike Gesicki, very good. They've always got a good running game in Miami, regardless of who the running back is over the years. So that's appealing for Derek Carr or for Aaron Rodgers. But the Miami Dolphins are a team that remind me of 2020 Tampa Bay, in which they're a team that could go all in right now. They don't really have that many ties to Tua. Of course, the team may give Tua another shot if someone says, hey, this guy can say his last name right now. But other than that, I mean, I could see Aaron Rodgers going to the Miami Dolphins. I think.
Oh, my God. Which is why I think there is realistic possibility they move on, because this guy, how much stock can you put into this guy if he's already had 3 confirmed concussions last year? And let's be real, it was more than that.
Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers to the Dolphins could be very good, and that's just something that you're not really seeing right now at all.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see how this all plays out. I think this weekend is going to be very big across the NFL, simply because there's Spencer's shirt right there. He's flexing it, but not flexing it too hard. Go ahead and flex it, baby. Flex some guns right there. Hell yeah. There we go. All right. So thank you guys for watching on Spotify, YouTube. Again, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It's easy. You'll see 5 stars, and then light those puppies up. I'm talking about the stars, not whatever else you're talking about when I say light that puppy up. But exciting news for Monday and Tuesday. I will be co-hosting the Ronnie and T-Crash show with Ronnie Night Train Lane from 3 to 7 on the iHeartRadio app on Monday. Now, Tuesday, Ronnie's out. Tom is out. Jay Retcher and I will be co-hosting the Ronnie and T-Crash show from 3 to 7. So very exciting stuff there. I'm excited for that. Spencer, I'm sure you have a busy weekend with some Young Harris College basketball or other sports. What do you got going on this weekend?
We got homecoming at the basketball games. That's always a fun thing, because you got to love all the sororities and fraternities that Young Harris has that you don't even think about until they all pop up at a basketball game one time a year. They've got some annoying names to pronounce in which they have absolutely no help for the pronunciation guide. You've got 4
you got a great opportunity.
You've got 4 senior days back to back all in one day. It's great. Young Harris basketball, though, of course, is fun to watch, with the women's team having 2 really good players, especially one of them being number 24, in which we've had our brother on the podcast before. And then the men's team, of course, having a great season besides their 30-point loss yesterday to Lander University. So, of course, that team may be falling apart at the wrong time, but we'll see how that goes as the season goes on. But, of course, like you said, good opportunity at Young Harris, of course, to announce the games. Just the homecoming stuff is always a little bit extra in terms, because you never really see those kids out.
You're extra, baby.
They're not listening, so it's okay. But other than that, yeah, I'm excited for this weekend just to see some basketball again and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Chris Mathis podcast with my co-host Spencer Mathis back there on the other side of the glass, per se, featuring Lightning McQueen. If you guys want to keep up with us, at the Chris Mathis on Twitter, and of course Spencer's is at L Savage Spence. We will talk to you guys next week. A lot of moves will be happening this weekend across the National Football League. Watch out. A lot of quarterback talk, and Spencer called it. I think that Aaron Rodgers will make his decision by early next week. By the time that our next podcast comes out, we'll talk about his destination. We'll also talk about Buccaneers OC Dave Canales and what he brings to the table. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys then.